Computer. Boom. All right, it's official. We're recording. Thank you guys who have joined us for being here today. And I know some of you guys, like those who said you're in Japan, it's quite late in the evening, so I appreciate you guys choosing us over Netflix or whatever else the other options are in the world. But if this is your first knowledge drop or you just haven't been to one in a while, I'll do the housekeeping stuff real quick. Basically, there's a chat box there that you guys are already using, so feel free to type to each other in there, comment on how you like my hat or those glasses or whatever you want to talk about in the chat box. There's also a question and answer box on the other side of the Zoom webinar feature, so feel free to put any questions you have in there as Will's going through his slide deck. If you have questions you don't want to forget for the end, we should have about 10 minutes at the end of the half an hour to do some live question and answer with our man of the hour, Will. And also, as I mentioned, this is getting recorded, so this will live on forever in the Knowledge Drop blog archive after we get it up on our Remote Your YouTube channel. So you can always watch it or send it to friends that you think might benefit from this as well. Anybody that's a creative or going through a career transition will probably benefit from hearing a story like Will's. It's pretty interesting, which is why when I heard it for the first time back in Chiang Mai a couple months ago, I asked him if he would do a knowledge drop on it, because it's not something that everybody goes through, but I think it's one of those things that a lot of people consider. So with all of that out of the way, let me pass it over to Will, and thank you also in particular for being up in the middle of the night in Japan, willing to do this knowledge drop for the nation. Good human. Appreciate you, man.
Hear me?
There we go. I think we got you.
Now share the screen. And
let's get into it. There we go. Presentation mode.
Okay. So let's go to present.
Awesome. Looking perfect.
So this knowledge drop is, I get started now, right? This knowledge drop is going to be about transitioning late to a career in design. So what's about to drop? Basically, I'm going to cover what it was like to go from a legal career to a creative career, specifically in the entertainment industry as a freelance illustrator and concept artist. I'm going to be sharing my experience transitioning back from law to freelance illustration and concept art in my late 20s and early 30s. Why am I dropping it? Well, first of all, I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Rhode Island School of Design, and I have a JD from Fordham University School of Law. And I tried having what's considered a normal career as a lawyer. It just wasn't the right fit for me, and a lot of times it was a pretty bad experience. I had to transition to art kind of late. It was about when I was 28, 29, and basically start from scratch, learning everything again, and sort of starting from level 0. And I want to share what that process was like so that I can help people that might be thinking about a change like this and they might be going through something similar. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why my career wasn't working. So on the left here, I have some pictures of when I was a lawyer, and it was all, it was an up and down. Like these are probably some of the better moments. Up there, there's me winning a competition. There's me teaching a class at Hyundai Construction and working at Hyundai Construction in Korea, which is great. Graduating from law school is pretty good. And there were parts of living in New York that were pretty awesome. But I knew like very early on in law that it was a pretty bad fit for me from the start. I didn't really understand the requirements of the career and how much I was going to have to sacrifice to like make it work. I had gone into law purely for material reasons. I was chasing money and trying to sort of live this kind of idea that I had that life had to be. And it became a bit of a chain. I felt like trapped in this path now. Like you're on a railroad and you can't really deviate too much. And any kind of mistake pulls you out of the railroad. And suddenly you're not going to be making the money that you wanted. You're not going to have that life that you thought about. I also felt like I had abandoned things that I cared about when I was younger, especially since I've gone to art school. I also had trouble with a lot of the colleagues in law. Like people, had different interests, different like values than what I'd been raised in, and it was pretty tough. It's one of the things that made it a hard fit. Although I did meet a lot of wonderful people and do have still good friends from that time. And yeah, I felt like basically obligated to continue the career once I started it. I felt like it might be shameful to give it up. I felt like I had to maintain this facade, and a lot of what you see in these pictures is like, it's what I would post to Facebook. It's just the good moments, but you don't really see a lot of the sort of difficult things I had to go through. And yeah, I reached a point where it became sort of very difficult emotionally and mentally to keep it up. And I decided I would just go to art again. It felt like the right thing to do at the time. And I really also underestimated how difficult that was going to be, but that was the decision I took, and that's what got me here. So why would you do this? First of all, career in design and illustration and any kind of creative field is pretty interesting and fun. Like the problems you deal with are just, challenging in a good way. And you meet a lot of great people in the industry. It can be a lot less stressful, though that depends on like where you land in the industry. If you're in a big studio or something like that, it can be very similar to working in a big office in a law firm or like an accounting firm or something like that. It's far more lighthearted than what you're doing in law. Like it's definitely, you're not dealing with like the livelihood of a person or someone's life. If you're in like another sort of even more challenging field like medicine. This is also like a really good time to be in it. It's kind of a golden age in terms of entertainment technology. There's lots of demand for it. There's lots of different jobs and opportunities in the industry. It can be pretty lucrative. For example, the painter that's featured here in these paintings is Feng Zhu. And he's a tremendous artist that makes a ton of money and owns a school in Singapore. And, he just has created an empire basically out of his design skills and out of the things that he teaches others. It's also a career that's rewarding beyond material things. Like you're basically chasing a dream. If this was something you wanted to do, always like the rewards that you're going to feel by conquering this thing that seems so difficult, that seems so impossible, are pretty great. And most importantly, it really was my dream since I was a kid. And it took me a while to accept it, but once I did, that was definitely a great reason to switch to it. So the first thing that a lot of people ask, or sort of one of the first things that comes up is like, how hard is it? And professional art is definitely hard. It's a difficult path to go through. I like to compare it to like playing professional sports. There's definitely a lot of specialization. And you're going to have like different fields in design and in sort of creative careers where people have given their entire lives to it. And that's what scares, I think, a lot of people is like the amount of time that you have to put to get good at it. But it's definitely, even though there's specialization, it takes sort of, it's skills that you build. It's things that you learn. It's not something that, a lot of people assume that it's something that you have to be born with. And that's definitely not the case. Although there are people who seem to have more talent and learn faster. It's definitely something that a lot of people can pick up. And yeah, basically that's a lot of what I think is very important for people to realize. Another thing that makes it difficult is that it doesn't seem as difficult when you start. Like you might start and you might think this project that you're doing or this sort of creative field that you're trying to enter is something you can do. You got it. You got all the energy. You start your project. And then you reach sort of this Dunning-Kruger effect where like your confidence level is higher and higher and higher. And then you reach a stumbling point and you start to see the actual difficulty of what you're trying to do. Not just your individual first project, but maybe your whole career, like what you've just done. You committed to something that now you have a little more clear view of it, and your confidence level starts to dip and dip. And it might take a few years of just complete loss of confidence until you really start to build skills that are actually valuable, that you actually can see the value in. Another problem with it is that, as you sort of develop skills, you kind of plateau sometimes, and your ability to see your mistakes can be greater than your ability to actually do the things that you want to do. And so you have what they're calling here in this chart, the plateau of ultimate doom, is basically your confidence going really far down because you know that you need to do better and your vision exceeds your ability. So this green line, basically your vision, your things that you're hoping to do are not within your realm of ability, but you can learn, you can continue to practice, and you can continue to improve beyond even what you might be expecting. And that's almost definitely going to be the case for someone that's starting out. Like you're just not even aware of the ways you can learn. The main thing I think, especially for freelance artists, that people worry about is uncertainty. And I will definitely say in art, and especially in freelance art, there are no guarantees. The path is much less predictable than other paths that you might be used to. But it's also possible to do really well. And art really, when you're going to get into it, is the story of individuals. Like it's not, I did what my friend did and we both did really well. I followed exactly his steps. It's more like I found a way to do this myself, and it was my story. And that's something that you sort of learn as you go. Like you have to sort of come up with new ideas, new ways of doing things, and sort of be the vanguard of what's being designed, what's being created. And you really want to, for especially for freelancer, embrace that uncertainty. Like if it's going to scare a lot of people off, maybe that's a good thing. That's like eliminating competition for you. So if you have an industry that you really care about, become the best at it, become the best at your particular field, work every day, combine all the business skills that you've developed over the years with the art that you're trying to make, and work every angle: social media, marketing, control your costs, networking. You're going to feel definitely a lot less uncertainty as you go through the process. As the further along you go, like the more you'll understand how things work, and that's definitely going to reduce uncertainty. So another question people are kind of always considering is when to do it. If you're going to transition out of a job, in the creative field, I feel like there's a lot less time limit than something like, you know, especially visual arts. There's a lot less time limit that you would have in like sports, or that you would have in like more physical arts where your body is maybe a limiting factor. In art, you can be extremely like, you know, of an advanced age and still be able to learn a lot and still be able to do a lot of what you have to do. Technology is also changing really fast. So the technology that is used to learn about art and to learn the skills that you need to have is getting a lot better. So people that might have taken 5 years to learn something, for you, it might take 2 years, and maybe in a few years, it might take a few months. And that is really increasing the things that you can do, but it's also making it easier now than I think ever before to learn how to do this stuff. And I really think today's students are going to be as good as like what used to be considered masters before, like tomorrow's students. Definitely opportunities do seem to be arriving, like a lot of new stuff. There's VR, there's all kinds of new industries and new technologies, and being able to keep on top of all that stuff is very interesting, very exciting, and definitely a skill that you should really cultivate. And also I think the sooner you start, you know, the easier it's going to be. Like you start now, that gives you, you know, and instead of waiting 2 years, like you're starting right now, that's going to give you 2 years head start, and 2 years to suffer through the kind of the peaks and valleys that we talked about before. You want to get those out of the way as soon as possible. And you can do this definitely while you're working a steady job. I know people that work all kinds of jobs that have started creative jobs and gotten into the creative field later. Like I know engineers. I know a guy that was a plumber. He had 3 kids, and now he's one of the best artists in California. So it's definitely something you can do while you're sort of making money doing something else. So how do you do it? Well, basically, art is a group of skills that need to be trained. Every discipline has like certain things that you have to learn to be good at it. So what the first thing you want to do is learn as much as you can about everything in the industry. You want to know what the jobs are, who the players are, what the companies are that can hire you. And you definitely want to learn how to get good at the particular area that you're targeting or that you're interested in. And you don't want to have long gaps in practice time. Like once you start, it's good to just kind of steadily increase practice every day, or steadily continue to practice every day. And one of the main things is, of course, don't quit when it gets hard. Like you're going to have those moments where you're going to want to give up. And that's a lot of the people that make it are just simply not giving up when those points reach there. Just accept that there's going to be that difficulty level. And then, like I mentioned before, use all the skills and contacts that you've already made and all the people that you're meeting as you try to do this to support what you're trying to do. So one thing I really want to talk about, and one thing that's very important to know, is that design of any kind of project or production of any kind of project, like video games, like movies, is part of a process. And every part of this process has different people that can do different types of jobs. And so the process starts with pre-production. And what you do in pre-production is you research, you write scripts, you design, you do pre-visualization artwork. Then you go on to production of whatever is being made. So then we're talking about, you know, the characters that are being modeled in 3D, environments that are being modeled in 3D, props, tanks, vehicles, and that kind of stuff. You also have character animators and people that combine all these things in scene setup, and then animating scenes, rendering. All these jobs here in the center are jobs that are a little bit easier to do because people are less familiar with them. So if you can get training in any kind of these projects, it'll definitely get you in, making a little bit more money and get you in a little faster. And then finally, there's post-production. So editors, directors will come in, sound editors, final review people, and they're going to deliver this product. And these are kind of hard to get. They pay well, but yeah, basically each of these fields has different difficulty levels, and the more you learn about it, the easier it's going to be to get into that particular field that attracts you. I would say pre-visualization is definitely one of the harder parts, and it's kind of the area where I'm at. Very early pre-visualization. You can see some of my work here on the right. I've got some designs for this building, so we go through sort of what it might look like, what kind of world it is, and then I refine this drawing a little bit and refine it more, and then you got the final design of what's going to be used. So in terms of what I do, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between traditional fine art versus entertainment design and design kind of art. So most art schools are used to teaching fine art skills, so painting, sculpture, these things, and it's often sold through galleries and museums. You're targeting collectors and people with high net worth. And there's definitely a whole world of that that's very interesting, and also it's not something I want to down talk in any way, but what I kind of focus on is entertainment art, which is mainly problem solving. So it's definitely for commercial purposes, and there's definitely a lot of, you know, a lot of meaning and a lot of sort of elements of that as well. But it's generally going to be a part of a process, like game or film development. And entertainment art is aimed at studios and the public. Studios and public are going to be your sources of revenue. And it's definitely a little bit more time sensitive in terms of you're not necessarily making something that's going to be looked at for centuries from now, but it's something where we're targeting a problem right now that needs to be solved in the moment. And okay, so the different fields have like different requirements in terms of foundation skills. So when I was talking a little bit about before about getting to know what you do, this is a chart by Psychra that kind of explains different things that you might need to know to do different types of jobs. So you have animators, for example. They have to know proportion, they have to know construction, anatomy, gesture, but values and color theory aren't as important. Whereas someone that does what I kind of focus on, which is storytelling, manga, comic art, they have to know a lot of the foundations, but maybe not as much color theory unless you're also a colorist, and then you have to know everything. But each field kind of stresses things differently. Like character designer has less fields here, but they really have to know those fields. Like they have to be masters of these particular sort of red highlighted fields. So start getting to know the kind of area that interests you and what you need to be good at. And this chart is pretty helpful for that. Psycher is a great guy. He's got a website with a lot of information for different kinds of artists and what they might have to learn. All right, so in terms of foundations, what I'm talking about, here are some examples of my foundation practice. So on the left here, we have some studies of leg, anatomy. I'm trying to add some gesture to these drawings. Also form, you want to be able to show that these things are three-dimensional. So a lot of form practice. And gesture over here, and a little bit of perspective. I also need to know that as well. And then how to construct a body from like something that you're imagining to something that's more fleshed out. And all right, so another thing that's very important that I really want to stress is consistency. So practice in art is, I think the best way to do it is to do a little bit of work every day. And this is why you can have a job, you can have another career and kind of work at it while you work on your art, because you don't really want to be doing what's on the bottom chart here, where you're putting 15, 12 hours a day, a couple of days, and then you crash and you start being unable to reproduce that every day. You start kind of losing that momentum that you had at the beginning. What you want to do is keep a consistent amount of effort. One of my best teachers, Anthony Jones, recommended between 2 to 4 hours of work. And I think that's a pretty good guide. I kind of tend to do a little more. I tend to do like 4 to 6. But I work every single day, you know, Sunday to the next Sunday, every day of the week. So yeah, and the everyday part is definitely more critical than hitting numbers one day and then crashing. All right. So what I mainly do, I do storytelling. I focus on comic art, and here I have a few examples of my work. A couple of these here on the left were written by me, so I did the writing and the art for these. Over here we have projects that I've been working on for different clients. This is actually a remote year client. I want to plug his company. It's Loda Massage. It's great if you need a massage client in the US. And I did a comic for him sort of as promotional purposes. And here's another project I worked on as well with a great writer from the US. And okay, so my process basically, what I do first of all is develop some idea of what I want these characters and these elements of the story to look like. So here we have all the development, or a lot of the development I did for this character. So we have turnarounds of his head. We have turnarounds of the different characters that are going to be in the story. Different outfits that they're going to wear, different eyewear. We were talking about this is part of a story element in this particular project where these guys have these little computers on their heads, and we're trying to see, like, okay, are they going to be like, sunglasses? Are they going to look like these crazy futuristic shades? We ended up settling on they're going to be like contact lenses. So this was kind of a difficult problem to solve, because I felt like, and a lot of us felt in this project, that the glasses just looked a little bit too retro, like Google Glass or something. All right, and once I have the elements of the project ready, I start composing the scene either from a script, or if I'm writing it, I basically just write the story in visual form and then add the language later. So I'm thinking about the different beats in the story and what the different pages are going to look like. And then to the right here, you see sort of the finished product with the writing and everything that's going to come into that. And here I have the process I did for another client, the same client from before, from Remote Year. He gave me an idea of what he wanted, and I created sort of this outline. I sent it to him. He had a couple of changes, and then we had the final sort of design for it. And things that you definitely want to do, these are sort of going to be the keys to success, is first of all, take advantage of any free opportunity that you can. There's definitely a lot of information now that's available for free. YouTube is a great resource. Gumroad has very cheap sort of tutorials that you can buy. Udemy is another great one. Schoolism is basically a school, like a Netflix for classes. Remote Year also has a partnership with Skillshare, which is also pretty useful. And I don't know a lot of the details, but apparently you can get full classes there, and it sounds pretty awesome. It's something I want to check out. And yeah, definitely, as I mentioned before, try to get a sense of the pipeline and where you're going to fit in, and then use these free resources initially to kind of train yourself in that area. And then when you have a better idea of what you're going to do, you're going to want to, go to maybe some more high quality resources. So mentorships, live classes, online classes, these start to play a bigger role once you've kind of determined a general target of what you want. But once you know exactly what you want, that's when you stack your effort. That's like the bottom sort of area here of advice, is like, you know what you want, do everything that you can to get it. This is where you invest. This is where, like, you really pull your resources into it. Even, your heart, your soul, your wallet, you're definitely going to pour all of that into there, because that's your life. That's your story. What you don't want to do is you don't want to spend a lot of money at the beginning, for sure. You might not want to move to a really expensive city unless you're ready for it, unless you can cover the expenses of it. You will network and learn a lot there, but it's going to increase your stress level a lot. And I think that you can do a lot of training before you get there that'll make that experience easier. Or you might not even go. You might be able to build a career from a smaller city or from another country. It really depends on like how much client interaction your particular field requires. I would say be very careful with getting degrees in art right now. It can be helpful. You'll definitely network, but it's a lot of money, and a lot of schools are kind of old-fashioned. They haven't all embraced the new technologies. Some of them definitely have. But a lot of the schools aren't up to date, and a lot of the cheaper ones, especially the ones you can find like almost anywhere, don't have people that have been in the industry. So they sometimes care more about like making a profit and keeping their teachers involved than actually teaching you the skills that you need to have. Another important thing is don't worry about grades that you might have gotten. Even in art classes, nobody's going to care about your grades. No studio will ever ask for them, or what your GPA was. None of that really is going to matter. And definitely don't be afraid of the competition. I feel like once you get into art, like the more you know about your field, the more you're going to realize the skill levels are all over the place. And the smarter you are, and the more you train yourself, and the more focused you are on what you're trying to do, the less challenging a lot of that competition is going to be. And the competition really becomes the top of the field. And that's like, and some of them are really good, almost impossible to meet. But you're going to find yourself, if you put a lot of heart and effort into this, and you have at least, sufficient skill to at least compete, you're going to find yourself competing pretty well. So I wouldn't worry as much about the competition as most people do. All right, so here are some more resources. And if you guys can look through this later, but like I talked about before, there's some specific artists that I mentioned here that you can look up on YouTube. If you're interested in drawing, modern day James, as he goes by, or James Murphy, is the best resource on drawing right now. He's available on YouTube for free. You can go on Gumroad and buy his tutorials, which go into even more depth. And there's a lot of stuff you can do to learn from him. Marco Bucci is a great resource for painting. And FZD is also, it's free. It's available on YouTube, and it's great for designing environments and things like that. And then paid, you know, obviously I've mentioned it before, but Gumroad is there, QBrush, Schoolism, and Skillshare, like we talked about before. And in terms of classes and mentorships, these, let me just move this out of the way a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. These critique classes are really great at Brainstorm. They're basically full art classes. You don't have to go to a university. You just pay by the class. And you can buy, probably this is going to be the top of the industry right now, going to Brainstorm. And they are offering some classes online now, which is amazing. Concept Design Academy is very similar to Brainstorm, but they focus a little bit more on storytelling and storyboarding, things like that. Although they do have a great concept art program, and they're also a great option. And CGMA is a great option for people that are traveling. People that might be on remote year right now might want to look into that. They have also full classes, but they're online. And Comics Experience, if you're into comics, is the best resource on the internet right now. So yeah, that's pretty much my presentation. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Go, Will. That was amazing, man. Your drawings are incredible, dude. You have such a, well, I want to say like a gift, but honestly, you've mentioned many times that you worked really hard at achieving it. So maybe it's more of an, you know, like an earned skill than just a natural gift, but you really have something special right now, man. And it's really cool to see your work. You want to pop off of screen share and we'll go back to just our little faces here in the Zoom room. We did actually have, we're almost at time, but we did have one great question come through from your fellow roomie, Casey. He's asking, aside from the practical skills that you mentioned, do you think that creativity in general is something that can be taught?
I think that creativity gives a boost to certain people. It's kind of like, and it's definitely, you know, I think it's more of a boost. I think that it definitely helps. It's like being tall and being strong will definitely make you better at basketball. But maybe an average size guy can like train himself and like, you know, be like Muggsy Bogues. Like maybe you train yourself and you find a field where you can dominate, even though you're not at the stature that you need to be to play good basketball at that sort of super height level. And maybe you find a position that you can be good at that nobody's targeting. It does play a role, but I would say that if creativity can also sometimes just be a lot of interest, like maybe you're just so interested in stuff that you really try to develop it, devote every sort of resource you have to it and all your attention to it. And I think that, yeah, it plays a role, but it's not everything. I'm not as talented as some of the people that I'm friends with, but I still compete and I still find ways to make sort of my mark.
Amazing, man. Yeah, and like I'm sure maybe other people out there or people that watch this might have questions. Are you cool with people reaching out to you on Slack in the future?
Yeah, anyone that needs any kind of information or is interested in any kind of sort of this stuff can reach me at any time. If I'm through the channels that are there, and I'll answer as soon as I can. Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Thanks again. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back in another 2 weeks. I think we got one coming up on taxes, which is not as maybe interesting or as creative as a subject, but something we all have to deal with. So come join us in 2 weeks for the next knowledge drop. Thanks again, Will. Thanks everybody out there that joined. Appreciate y'all. Peace.